Hello there, my name is Shona, and I'm going to be talking about Webtoons. Why? I love them. Possibly too much, but who can say? The first one I'm going to start with is Let Me Stay Over Tonight. Personally, one of my faves. I know that everything always has ups and downs and twists and turns, and not everyone wishes to be on the ride. But I want to give you my honest feedback about it and why I like it so much. And if you are at all, interested at looking at it after this video, go for it. I read this on the Webtoon app. Currently, it's a completed story. So when you go on there, you can only read up to a certain number of chapters before they stop you. And you have to use their daily pass, which you can only use once for every 24-hour period with whichever comic you want to view with that daily pass. So you can't just look at this one and then another one that's on a daily pass. It's a little annoying, not gonna lie. So you can't binge it all, unfortunately. But if you have some patience, you can go through it and still have a nice time. The general story of this comic is that we have Giri, our main gal. She is a junior TV writer, starting a little late, compared to others. But, she started and then pivoted her career to television because she'd found that would be her passion in life. So currently, right now, she's working at a TV station doing a sort of reality TV variety show situation. And we start with her on the day after a long night out with the company. Because in Korea, which is where this is set, it seems to be quite the norm that there are many company dinners and many rounds, and she got herself quite drunk, and she's trying to figure out the fragments of memories. She recalls someone asking her a question, but what is that question? She's trying to piece them together, and then she finds some odd things, and she's like, hand warmer, handkerchief, why do I have these? Did I just randomly pick up someone's stuff? I don't know. She goes about her life. She's thriving, just trying to get there. And then it dawns on her that the person who was asking a question was asking her out on a date. So now it becomes, oh no, who asked me out? And she, by process of elimination of her own, knowledge of her coworkers, is like, well, realistically, there's only one choice. But, not to be too spoilery, but we do learn later on that actually a couple of different guys had asked her out, and so then it becomes this story of, them trying to convince her why each one is a good candidate for her, and why she is like, this is a little much, I didn't expect all of this. And, them navigating this situation, many goofs, many gaffes. We end on a very happy note. It definitely has a very polished look to it, and I feel like it has the appropriate amount of like silliness here and there, you know, like we have our sort of meme-ish faces, our soul leaving the body, our, you know, this, that, and the other, that are all fun and exciting or just silly. It is action-packed when it needs to be, but, you know, it's not like 100%. It is an office romance at the heart of it. It's not a chaebol situation. There is one in here, but he's not part of the triangle. Essentially, this is, you know, her with her coworkers. I feel like, for the most part, the characters are pretty well defined. I think that the writing had a pretty good pace. I think that, you know, like overall, where a love triangle usually has like downfall of, well, one guy is obviously way better than the other, or she obviously already chose this one. I don't feel like that so much happens here. They're pretty good guys, both of them, though as you go further along, you realize, you know, which one does work out better for her, and, you know, she makes her decision, and when they finally get together, it does make sense, and it doesn't become like super catty between all of them, and they don't really have a breakdown in any relationship, really. So I think overall, it handles a lot of that well, where I think something more thrown together might just cheap out on it and be like, well, this one's obviously just a terrible, so we can get to the true pairing here. So obviously there are, you know, some cons that come with anything, and I would say probably the biggest ones are some contrived office politic kind of things, where you're just kind of like, okay, I guess we needed a villain here, but alrighty now. But they're common with this genre in general within like the webtoon space when you come to like office romances. So you kind of just have to accept it. There obviously is a little white knighting that happens in a lot of these romances, you know. We have to have him come in, save the day, keep our heroine safe, and all of that good stuff. And, you know, sometimes messages I feel like get a little muddled when we start doing that, 'cause it's like, oh, we got a strong independent female, but also how can we make her in need of this person so that, you know, we can move things along a bit. Another thing that stands out to me is definitely when we get to the actual like staying over tonight situation, because the prospective dates here are a little manipulative and a little, you know, they're trying to butt into her life maybe too much, but also this is a comedy, so it adds a lot to that. And, you know, it is a fantasy, so obviously things don't work the way that they do in real life, but, you know, depending on how you see that, that can be rather irritating, or you can find a lot of enjoyment out of the situational comedy that comes out of this. So that's sort of kind of up to you how you feel about those kinds of issues, but for me, they weren't deal breakers, because a lot of them did add something to the story and did, you know, get us to a lot of the goalposts in decent enough ways, but it can be a little paint by numbers sometimes with some of these comics. So here's the more spoilery bits. I'm going to talk about specific story points, beats that, either I really liked or I found kind of annoying. So if you would rather not know this information, you can go ahead and leave. That's fine. If you would like to hear me ramble on, then here we are. So our main gal, Giri, is a new-ish writer, which, makes her position in the company kind of, low on the pecking order. So with that comes a few things. One of which, she doesn't have a whole lot of friends there. So, at the beginning when she's thinking about, who would ask me out, she thinks it's her best work pal, Sung-hoon, who is a really nice guy. He's always smiling, he's always cheerful, and willing to give anyone a hand. And then she thinks, he's the only single guy here that would go out with me. But actually his storyline, we learn about much later. He's our chaebol in the mix. Like, what? And he's not even in the triangle. I actually kind of like his sort of side plot that comes in later, but I will say it's not like, I guess it's developed to a point, but we spend so much time with our main trio that, to be honest, he does feel a little left out at times. But in the beginning, he is sort of her workplace crush, and so she's kind of confused when he wasn't the one who asked her out. And so when Giri learns who it was, it ended up being the producer of the show she's working on, so essentially her boss, Mr. Gie, and then the actor who is sort of the host personality of their variety show, Mr. Leo O. And Leo, I will say, I think the writing around him was really fun because he is sort of like the little puppy dog kind of guy. But he is like so focused on a particular point in time that sometimes he's a little grating, I will admit. Because we learned that actually Leo picked his stage name because he and Kiri were actually classmates at one point, and she was really into Leonardo DiCaprio. So he decided to take a stage name that reflected her interest at the time. And one of the reasons he's like doing this is because he knows that she's working on the show, and so he wanted to get back in touch with her. And he really tries to come in this way of like, but I know you so well. But it's like, no, she was like 7 at the time. It's like 20 years later, And so, though I think he's genuine, he is in love with an ideal, which makes it harder as it goes on to appreciate all of his efforts into trying to make this relationship work. But I will say, he doesn't try to push it too far. Like, when he finds that he's pretty much out of the running, he graciously steps back, He realizes for her happiness, he can't force anything between them, and that, if they aren't meant to be, they aren't meant to be. And the writer does throw him a bone. He doesn't end up all alone. And of course, Mr. Gie is sort of this straight-lipped kind of like tough boss that everyone kind of hates because he always sets the impossible deadline and he expects you to put 110% in all the time, and he expects perfection. And Giri is like, why do you make me do these things and all this stuff? And you do wonder, like, why is he even interested in her? And then, he talks about how he has watched her, sort of grow and evolve as they've been working together, and he really likes the person that she's becoming, and they eventually have the relationship and they eventually date. But I think that relationship does make sense, and I think that it wasn't too forced in the writing, and things like that. I think that it was just really cute kind of seeing them come together, because they do seem like such opposites, because she's so bubbly and cute and like woo, and he's like so I'm so serious. So it was nice to kind of see that. The fight between Gyuri and Kangsu is really contrived, in my opinion. So essentially what happens is Kyungsu is seeing Gyuri's brother, but has not told Gyuri. And then one day, the brother and her come to Gyuri and they're like, we're having a baby. And of course, this is just a shock to her because she had no idea that they were together. And then all of a sudden, what? A baby? And then they tell her, we're gonna be living together and you're gonna have to figure out your own living situation. Which, she's a junior writer, she's not making a whole lot of money. And so, it was, the fight there just didn't, it was probably the most contrived thing that didn't make sense to me. And I mean, a lot of that comes down to the miscommunications that a lot of these things tend to rely on, which gives me a lot of annoyance. I just feel like that could have just been handled by a conversation prior. Of course, like, if she had gotten pregnant and had to move out and Gyuri knew about their relationship, sure, that could still create some conflict, but to like put all three of her, like three things at her at once, whew, that would be a lot for anyone. So I don't feel like that particular one was like my favorite thing. And then of course we have the workplace villain, Unsol. She's like the high school bully who is not a senior writer, but at least a higher up writer than her, so makes her do all of the, the intern tasks, as you might say, the coffee runs, the sorting that nobody wants to do, all of the, things that everyone says you're going to earn your stripes with, that nonsense. For the most part, she's a pretty average workplace villain. She's jealous of Gyuri because Gyuri keeps getting attention from the people that she would like attention from, and she wants to do anything that she can to get in the good graces of the higher ups and all that stuff. Her storyline, fairly predictable, but I wouldn't say it was terrible, and then Kao is the co-host of the show that they're producing, and she has a big crush on Leo. So she is sort of a secondary villain. She doesn't have the personal connection with Giri, but she's upset that Leo keeps giving her all of this attention. So, she is a little snippy and, she's not very forgiving when there are mistakes made or, all this, that, and the other. But they don't drag it too terribly far with her. She eventually is one that has like a somewhat of a redemption arc at the end, so she's not fully terrible. And I don't think she was poorly written either. It's just that, she also has a little bit of a predictable sort of accessory type quality to her, because Unsol kind of like fans her flames here and there, which is, what causes a lot of the blow ups. But, I don't think it was too bad. And let's see. Oh yeah, like I said, Sung-hoo has a whole arc of his own where he and Miss Cha, which Miss Cha is like, I guess sort of like a department head. I don't remember her exact title within this organization, but she's more of a direct supervisor over Giri. And Sung-hoo is like super into her, and there's this whole thing about her because she's getting a little bit older. Oh no, 30 is approaching. Oh, because in a lot of, especially Asian cultures, if you're not married by 30, you're just an old hag. So she deals with a little bit of that, and he's like, you don't have to go out looking for anyone. I'm right here. And they have a little bit of a tit for tat, and like, oh, I don't know. But eventually they do end up together, and actually I think they are really cute together. I just wish we had a little bit more time to develop that, a little bit more time to really dive into it a little bit, but, it's how everything is. Side plots tend to get a little, I guess, forgotten when you're dealing with sort of short spurts of events, like a webcomic. And then Miss Cha herself, though, I think she's really nice. I think that, she's not like too active in like the main relationship part of it, but she helps Giri along in her career and is like a good mentor, and I do enjoy her within the story outside of just her side plot. And yeah, I think that's most of our cast. So I guess the only other thing is I kind of wish we had like an extension, I guess. Like some of these webcomics, you may notice they'll have an ending of their main arc, and then they'll do like some side story chapters after. So it might be like rewinding back to a certain point to say, oh, this is what happened in between here. Or it may be a little bit in the future to be like, oh, this is where everybody is now, what happened after, I don't know, a couple of years, things like that. I kind of wish this one had that, because we get to the wedding and you're amped and you're like, oh, this is so great. And then that was just kind of it. And I was like, I don't know. I felt like we could have gone just a wee bit further just to see what happened. But that's just me, that I guess is the consumer in me just wanting more and more. But I do think it's a complete story. I do think it's, a fairly well written story. It has like a lot, like I said, a lot of the tropes that come with these office romances. And it has a lot of the things that I really like, which is the cute art with, a lot of silly things. It's got good comedy. And we have good characters, because characters are my favorite thing. I tend to look at characters more than story. I'm willing to forgive a lot in story if we can have good and fun characters, which we have here. So I'm willing to forgive some of the tropes that I maybe don't like as much. So I definitely would say overall, good experience. I would definitely recommend if you are in the sort of office romance slash sitcom type of mood. Like I said, this is one of my favorites, if not favorite webtoon that I've read so far. You can let me know if you've read it, if you enjoyed it, if you didn't, or if you had some points that you wanted to discuss. I'm totally down to talk about it. Let me know. This was a little bit off the cuff, so hopefully it wasn't too much of a zigzag wandering about, walk in the woods for you. But if you would like me to look at any others, or you would like to know of any recommendations, just let me know in the comments down below. I've enjoyed talking about this because I really like talking. So this is my review of Let Me Stay Over Tonight, and have a wonderful day, night, whatever you're doing. Bye.